What's going on, Bucs fans? Welcome back inside the 813. We are going to bring you two of our staff members every single Thursday to break down the studs and duds, the X factors, and of course, we have to talk about Todd. I am your host, James Yarcho, editor-in-chief here at the 813, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Rock Riley, our boots on the ground there. Of course, check out all the content we have for you here at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at the 813 TV, at JYarko_Bucks, and at Real Rock Riley. Rock, how we doing today, buddy?
We're doing good. You know, the sun always comes up. It was looking kind of grim, and it has been in Buccaneers land. We got through the hurricanes. We will get through these injuries. It's really hard when you got two studs that are out. But you know what? Being back in one buck and they're realizing a lot of the players are like, look, Todd Bowles told them the NFC South is still up for grabs. It is within your grasp. Oh, it's going to be hard and everybody's got to be there, but it's there. And so you got a chance to win the NFC South, and then you get a home playoff game. So, you know what? It's not as bad as it looked at Raymond James Stadium. Oh my God, James! But anyway, we'll get into that. But I'm doing good.
Yeah, well, and as I said on one of the Locked On shows this week, the world is a dark place and life has no meaning. That was my reaction after what happened to Chris Godwin. Well, like you said, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Let's start things off with the studs and duds this week, as we do each and every week. And it looked like for most of that game, the whole team was going to be duds. They started to turn it up and turn it on late in the game. It was too little, too late. But who is your stud this week following the Bucs loss to the Ravens?
It's going to be the offensive line, and if we want to really zero in, I'm going to go Cody Mock. Look at how the offensive line. I know you can't really totally go by PFF Pro Football Focus, but they give you a pretty good indication. And the Buccaneers offensive line graded probably the highest they did all season. You know what? They were under siege. The running game hadn't been going, and they were getting kind of like, they were getting hit on, and Baker Mayfield is having to make all these moves to get outside the pocket and this and that. They have done a nice job. And as long as I've been covering the NFL, Lyman always tells me that is one unit. It's not individual players. Like you got a wide receiver, he's on his own, a running back. Yeah, they got to play their time. But the offensive line, they all have to play as a unit, and it usually takes a little bit of time. So Bredesen was in. You're bringing in a rookie, Graham Barton. He also had an injury, and it was his first game back. Luke Gedeke has had concussion protocol. He was in for so many weeks. And so now that they play starting to play together a little bit, I think they did a really good job. They kind of help with that running game. So I'm going to go with Cody Mock, who seems to be getting better and better in the offensive line, James.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time they all played together since week one. And, something that I've said for years and years and years on Locked On Bucks is the offensive line is like an orchestra. And you have to trust that each different section is going to do their job, and it's really hard to build up that trust when you have guys bouncing in and out. It's really hard to have that chemistry and that belief in one another, that exactly what the person next to you is going to be doing. And when you have your full allotment of starters, it's a lot easier to do that. They've been working together since OTAs. Now you're starting to get back into the swing of things. Baker was sacked a couple of times, but I think part of that was because coverage downfield was really solid from Baltimore, which was surprising because they're not a very good pass defense. And then the indications early on were that the offensive line was humming because of the way the Bucs were running the football. Baltimore was allowing 59 rush yards per game, and the Bucs had passed that in the beginning of the second quarter. So, the offensive line really started off strong, and then it reached a point where they were doing all that they could. But yeah, I did think that they had a really, really strong game. And my stud for this week is kind of a reflection of the way that the offensive line played, because I'm going with Rachaad White. And this is a guy, he missed the New Orleans game. You had the buck and tuck nickname trending amongst Bucks fans on Twitter, and I wrote about it a couple of times on the 813, and you know the way that run game really got going against New Orleans. Well, here comes Rachaad White back, who had struggled. 111 yards of total offense. He was averaging 4 yards a carry, almost 12 yards a reception, gets into the end zone twice. And it was really, really good to see him having the kind of impact that he did after missing that Saints game and after the way that Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving really carried the load in the run game and in the pass game. And it was like, okay, well, Rashad's been the one struggling. How's he going to fit into this three-headed monster? And Cohen had talked about how each one of them was going to get an opportunity, and then they were going to ride the hot hand. And how is that entire dynamic going to work? The whole thing worked. Rashad played really well. Bucky and Sean Tucker played well. The Bucks finished with, I think it was like 129 or 131 total rushing yards as a team. So a really, really good game from Rachaad White. And they're going to need a game like that out of him this week against Atlanta.
You know what? I'm really glad you brought up Rashad White because not only are they going to need him with the running attack the rest of the year, they're going to need him out of the backfield catching passes. Um, Liam Cohen, normally at this stage of the game, you're not really adding new plays. You go into the season, they start at mini camp, the OTAs, they do the whole install training camp, they give them all these plays. Then they base it on what the opponents are going to do during the season. You might put in one, maybe two, maybe new plays a week. They admitted that not having Mike and not having Godwin, what are the strengths that they have with the guys that they have? They're formulating the game plan as we speak, James, and they are tweaking and putting in new plays. I would not be surprised. You're going to see more Rachaad White and maybe splitting him out, maybe having him catch passes. So he, it was good to see, and you can kind of see it. He had the fresh legs. It was like a jump start for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he would be our stud of the week, maybe in another episode right here down the road. I really do. I'm happy. He needed something like that mentally to get him going. So that's a good one, James.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we're talking about him in this segment again next week after the Atlanta game, because that is a huge, huge game. But we got to talk about the duds in this one, and I feel like this has become way too much of a trend. And my dud for this week is KJ Britt. He's not getting any better. And I hate to keep piling on, and I hate that he keeps coming up in this segment, but a bad penalty for roughing the passer. He had the hit that gave Tyke Smith a concussion, which, severely hurts the Buccaneers this week against Atlanta after Cousins already threw for 500 on him once before, and now the secondary is even more thin. He's a liability in coverage. He's a liability in run defense. It's just that the KJ Britt experiment at off-ball linebacker after they let Devin White walk, it's just not working. And I wish it was, and I was excited for him to become a starter after the way that he finished last season, filling in for Devin White. But the shortcomings are becoming more and more evident because they don't have Servassier Dennis to pivot to anymore to be that pass rusher. So those, you know, the the failures are magnified because he's always out there on the field. And now they're not going to have Servassier Dennis for the rest of the year. He had shoulder surgery. He's done for the season. So the injuries keep piling up, and unfortunately the bad plays for KJ Britt keep piling up.
One thing that Todd Bowles, to a fault, he will stay with a guy sometimes a little bit longer than need be, honestly, because he tries to believe in his guy. And I think that's the case. As we mentioned last year, when it was working, it was still a split with Devin White. I saw JJ Russell at practice. I'm like, when is this guy maybe going to get more of a shot? He's going to have to. He's going to have to because there's too many passes that are being completed easily over the middle. And I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I'll be surprised if Bowles doesn't put in JJ Russell or somebody else and give them more of a shot because it's a hindrance. It really is. And it's glaring. You can see it, James. I can see it. And NFL opposing coordinators can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other big thing is, you know, offensive coordinators are going to continue to pick on him. They are, and Atlanta is going to fire it up against him because of how inefficient he was on that Thursday night game. But and I hope he turns a corner. I really do. I'm rooting for the guy. I have no animosity towards him. I don't like talking about him in this section. I want to talk about him as a stud. I don't see how it's going to happen at this point. But Rock, who was your dud for the Monday night game?
Well, there were quite a few on defense, and I'm going to go with Jordan Whitehead. I was so excited, and so were the coaches when they got word from Jason Light that they were bringing back Jordan Whitehead. And I remember talking to him when he got here, and he said what he learned being with the Jets, and he's a better player now, and it was looking like that. And he did not have a good game. He's known as a thumper. You're going to need that physicality. His defensive pass skills, not very good. It was going to be, come on, Antoine Winfield is back. You guys should be good back there. There's too many passes that are being completed, man. And it's happening over and over again. And again, I'm walking around in the locker room. I'm talking to defensive players. They're all saying it's miscommunication, miscommunication. And I asked Yaya Diaby today, is it the scheme? Is there something about it that maybe you're not, maybe it's you're getting the word later, you're not in the right coverage, or these opposed? No, 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 no. Bowles is putting us in the right spot. So there could be quite a few guys on defense. Too much open stuff. But right, I want to single it out. I'll go with Jordan Whitehead.
Yeah, and he got off to a really good start. I would say that this is really the first like bad game that
Yeah.
he's had, and it's tough because so many players kind of collectively had a bad game, and so it can be hard to pinpoint one particular guy. But you're right. I mean, Lamar Jackson only completed 17 passes, but he only threw 22. And he still ended up with almost 300 yards, and he had 5 touchdowns. Like it's ridiculous. It seemed like the Bucks didn't have any kind of answer for Justice Hill in that quick screen or the dump off game. And that's kind of one of the spots where we expected Jordan Whitehead to excel was in those situations where he's reading what's going on, he can react, he can get a little bit of steam behind him and then lay the wood. And it wasn't happening in that game. So it was really tough to watch. And it compounded the problem, at the end of the day.
You know, on some stats sometimes can be a little bit misleading, but
Sure.
stats are there for a reason. Defensively, there is only one team in the NFL that is giving up more yardage than the Buccaneers. There is four, I think it's four teams that are giving up more points than the Buccaneers. This is a defense with Todd Bowles, littered with some good young guys, but also littered with veterans that have been there, done that. And Bowles is known as a great coordinator. I'm looking at the film again, and when he is not bringing these blitzes, they are just not getting it done. I don't understand that. Is it, and it's not a lack of being willpower? I just don't understand it. I honestly, the
Yeah.
offense is putting up big numbers. It's the defense right now that's the problem, James.
And that's really uncharacteristic for a Todd Bowles defense. And it doesn't seem like there's any answers on the horizon, but that's a perfect way to switch this thing over because on Thursdays we got to talk about Todd and Rock. That Monday night game was it wasn't just a gut punch. Losing Mike Evans was bad enough. Seeing him writhing around in pain in the end zone was bad enough. But then you get to less than a minute left and you lose Chris Godwin. And that moment ripped the collective heart out of Tampa fans. And Todd Bowles took a lot of heat for it. I laid my fair share of heat on him, on my other show. And I realized the warrior mentality and it's not over until it's over and all this stuff. But it's like with less than a minute left, down by 10, it's over. And it's okay to say that it's over There it's not a loser's mentality. I had a lot of people on social media telling me I had a loser's mentality for saying that the starter should have been pulled in that situation. But this is what happens. An injury is an inherent risk of the NFL. We all know that. But there are injuries and then there are unnecessary injuries. And Todd Bowles was, he caught some flack when he was talking to the media after the game and being asked about protecting his players, and he got pretty defensive about it. But you were there, Rock. You were in that locker room. You were in that media room. What kind of give us some insight as to what that was really like and kind of how Todd Bowles handled it?
Yes. Look, I can understand that, Godwin is a warrior. They're paid to play football. Yeah, the game is over. You are right, James, because did you hear what Baker Mayfield had to say? He's like, well, we could get the ball back. We could score a touchdown. We could do an onside kick. We already had success with that, and I could throw a hail mary. That's an awful lot. That's an awful lot. I can understand me when you really break it down. I'm like the percentage. I think it like 2% or something like that with the amount of time that they had and how
Yeah.
far they would have to go and have everything go right. I do believe Bowles does really honestly try to protect his players. I think now hindsight is 2020 and he's got to be kicking himself. He knows it. And now is when we're going to see what kind of a coach he really is. Because I will tell you, I've been in a lot of losing locker rooms and they put their heart and soul into it. Yeah, they make a lot of money, but most guys do. They're competitors. That's why they're at the top. They've made it to the NFL. There's many talented guys you've known and whatever. They're competitors and they don't like to lose. And that's why they have a little cool down period. It's so short. What is it? 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And you go in there and you got to, stay away, don't go right up to their locker. Let them have their space. This was different. When we were walking to go into the press, the area where we hear from Bowles, and here's Godwin on a cart. And I mentioned I don't want to be too dramatic. He was crying. He was crying. He was there. People were coming up to him. It was their leader. And when you saw that, knowing and it was gruesome. Even Bowles was saying on his press conference on Wednesday, like we all saw it. The leg is not supposed to go like that. When the players see that, and then they know. And he was a guy that already he had done, and they watched how he did his rehab. So it was I don't want to say a morgue, but it was rough. It was like a sickening feeling. And they had lost, but it was secondary. So I was like, how are they going to respond? Well, you know what? Once you get there, James, after they get it out of their system and you go in there and you realize the players, like they're playing for their jobs. They know that you're only in the NFL for a short time. So, and what the word was today, we're playing the Falcons. We're playing for first place. Like, we gotta get it together. We're gonna get it together. I gotta do my job. We got a chance. And they beat us last time. And the defense was like, Kirk Cousins destroyed us. So now we're gonna see, though. We're gonna see how he gets them together and gets them fired up with guys that are, backups and whoever else that they bring in. So I think this is gonna be a good indication now how good of a head coach Todd Bowles is.
Yeah, and you mentioned the impact that it has on the players and the low percentage and all that stuff. And I think one of my biggest problems was yeah, hindsight's 2020 and revisionist history and all that's an injury that probably shouldn't have happened. Baltimore had already pulled their starters. Lamar wasn't in the game anymore, effectively saying, this one's over. That injury happens. And like you, I mean, just pit of my stomach, I just felt nauseous. And it had nothing to do with the Buccaneers season and everything to do with Chris Godwin as a person and how hard he worked to fight back from that torn ACL and the year that he was having and knowing, you know, that this was going to be his time and whether he got paid by the Bucs or paid by somebody else, he was having a career year and I've like you, I've had the opportunity to speak with dozens of players, and I've been around those locker rooms, and I've had those conversations, and I just felt so bad for him as a person because I know how great of a person he is. But what really grinds my gears about all of this was that after this happens, and there's 43 seconds on the clock, and you're watching number 14 get carted off the field in an air cast, Baker still goes back out on the field. The rest of the starters still go back out on the field. And I'm just left there screaming, why? You just saw what happened. You just saw your leading receiver, one of the leading receivers in the league, get carted off, and you're going to put your starters back on the field again. Let it go, man. Throw in the towel. Don't let you know the very next play it could have been Baker's leg. Like, what are we doing here? And I think that was the part that really angered me about the entire situation was, yeah, you're trying to win a game no matter what the odds tell you. But when that happens, let it go.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's I don't know, in the moment, it also would have been a lot like Trask, all the backups, come on, God, come on, come on, come on, come on, get out there. That's also I don't know. I understand what you're saying. And again, looking at it now, he probably wishes he didn't. And no, the game was over, but you're never thinking of a season ending injury at that point in time. I'm just saying, it's just like, let's get it over. All right, finish here, try to do something with it. I understand what you're saying, but I think that he's taking a little bit even. I think he really does believe in trying to stay up and stick up for his players, and he doesn't want them to get hurt. He doesn't want to put them in that kind of a situation. So
Sure.
maybe if he had the time, it's all happening kind of quick, and those guys are warriors. And I guarantee you, Baker Mayfield wants to finish out, even if he's got to throw a hail mary, he's got no shot. They're tough competitors. So I see it a little bit on a different way, James. I do.
And that's why we have these conversations. It's nice to get different points of view. But
Yeah.
Rock, it's time to move on from Baltimore. What's
Yeah.
done is done. Evans is out with the hamstring. Godwin is out for the year. uh, and you're facing the Falcons now. And you're right. I mean, a win puts you in first place. You got some help from Seattle. So now
Yes.
you're both coming into this game at 4-3, and this is a must win. This is the moment where if the Bucs win this game and they get that division win, they're now a game ahead in the standings. They'll be at 5-3. Atlanta's going to be at 4-4. You can, and I know I mentioned it last week and I got some flack for it, but the Bucs could lose to the Chiefs and lose to the 49ers and go into that bye week. Hopefully on the other side you're getting Mike Evans back, and that schedule eases up a lot. You get the Giants, you get the Panthers twice, you get the Raiders, you get the Cowboys who are in complete disarray, you get the Chargers who, I mean, they're okay. You get the Saints again. Like, if the Atlanta game is, this is the turning point. This is the point in time where it's like, you get this win, we still give ourselves a chance. You lose this game, that's a real tough hill to climb, and you're basically looking at a wild card spot. So, taking a look at this matchup, Rock, we got to talk X factors. Who or what is your X factor in this game?
Yaya Diaby, Joe Tryon, Shoyinka. Get pressure on Kirk Cousins. You cannot let that older quarterback be comfortable in the pocket. He will pick you apart all day. It's time. Yeah, you got to win your one-on-one battles. He's starting to come on though, and Joe Tryon Shayenka, same thing. I'm watching them today. They're working on their moves. Yaya said he's putting us in good situations. You can't keep relying on the blitz all the time. So Yaya, Joe Tryon Shayenka, win your one-on-one battles. Get to Kirk Cousins. That's my X factor.
Yeah, and when they played last time, the Falcons didn't see Antoine Winfield Jr. and they didn't see Kalijah Cansey, and that game still went to overtime because it was one of those, you joke about it. It's like, here, you take it. No, you take it. No, you take
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
each team kept trying to give the game away. Um, but you're 100% right. And Yaya has been looking a lot better. A couple of sacks against the Ravens. One of them was gifted because of a bad snap. But that's still Lamar Jackson back there. You still got to chase him down and bring him down, or he's gonna make you pay. So a solid outing from Yaya and Joe Tryon Shoyinka. It's like I can't get a grasp on him. He starts off the season super hot, then he disappears for a couple of weeks, then he's showing flashes here and there, and I guess it's just kind of par for the course. But yeah, if those guys can win their one-on-ones, we could have a real interesting game on our hands. And I'm glad you went edge rushers because my X factor for this one, usually I pick a specific player. This time, I got to pick the running backs. And I'm talking about all three. I know Bucky Irving missed practice on Wednesday. He's dealing with a toe injury. But I talked about Rashad at the top of the show. You have Rashad, you have Tucker. Hopefully, Bucky is on the field. But without Evans, without Godwin, those running backs are going to be so vital in both running the ball and then in the passing game. And there's going to be times where you see Rashad and Bucky on the field together, or Rashad and Tucker, or maybe even all three, and you're splitting Rashad out wide. Maybe he's just running a little in route, maybe he's just running a little curl, but they're gonna split him out. These running backs are going to be so vital to the success to compensate for the fact that Godwin and Evans are not out there on that field. Not only that, but they're also going to dictate the pace of play. If the running backs are actually moving the ball, now all of a sudden you're in control. You're controlling the clock, you're controlling the pace, you're extending these, 8, 9, 10 play drives that chew up 6 or 7 minutes off the clock. Hopefully you're ending in pay dirt. And now all of a sudden you have the Falcons behind the sticks and against the clock. They're going to be so important, Rock. We need another performance from the offensive line like we just saw against Baltimore. But Rashad, Bucky, Tucker, all those guys have to be efficient in the run game. No more of these, 8 carries for 11 yards nonsense. We need Rashad at 4 yards a carry. I think Tucker was at like 6 or 7 yards a carry. Bucky had the lowest yards per carry, and he was at like 2.5. But he's an explosive play waiting to happen every time he touches the ball.
And they're going to have to. This is what you always say, like you got to have balance. You can't be a passed on run without Godwin, without Evans. The run game has to come through. It has to come through. Look, Raheem Jarrett, the Bowles was mentioning him. These guys are good. They're not studs. And Baker Mayfield seemed to be pretty good. I saw him also at his locker, and it wasn't like it's, the woe is me type. So, and Sterling Shepard, that's his buddy, you know what I mean? So they're going to have to come through. But bottom line is they're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to run the football. So that's a huge key. Get the Kirk Cousins and run the football efficiently, and hopefully the Buccaneers will come out with the dub.
Yep, you're those two things. You're going to give yourself a chance.
Yeah,
And when this
exactly.
Buccaneers team has a puncher's chance, they can be dangerous because they got a lot of guys on this football team that just they feed off of it. And it's that no quit attitude, that warrior mentality, all that. They feed off of Baker. Baker's going to make sure that he does everything he can to keep him in the game. Hopefully that doesn't mean more of the bad interceptions like we saw against Baltimore. Both of those interceptions the Baker threw were absolutely terrible, but
Right?
he's going to do what he can to keep them in the game. So it's not going to be a walk in the park for the Falcons. The Bucs are going to come out swinging, and they're going to be swinging hard. It's just a matter of whether or not Bowles can get the defense where it needs to be and not replicate what happened on that Thursday night. And we're going to see what Liam Cohen has in his bag of tricks to overcome these injuries. Jalen McMillan's got to step up. Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, Kate Otten. Maybe we're going to see some Devin Culp. And we've been kind of waiting on that a little bit. And they're going to have to use everybody because this is going to be it's going to take a full team effort to win this game. And then from there, anything can happen. Rock.
Let me tell you one other little story. You know who is going to be ticked off? It was always Trey Palmer. Remember when he would wake up pissed off that? And he told me he got
Mm-hmm.
that from his son. Tristan Wirfs. First time since I have gone in the Bucks locker room since Tristan Wirfs has got here, he was like, I'm not talking. I'm not talking. And he left. He was so upset with the loss and what happened with Godwin and Evans. I've never seen him like that. He is ticked off. So he is going to be mauling this week. I guarantee you. Look for a great game from Tristan Wirfs. And that continues with that offensive line.
Tristan's going to be serving up some pancakes. I can't wait to see it.
I
All
like it.
right. That is going to do it for this week. Again, check out all the content and shows available right here at the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at the 813TV, at Yarcho_Box, at Real Rock Riley. Make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. We want to thank you for taking a trip with us inside the 813.